So you have a research question, but you need to decide how are you going to collect your data. There are different methods that you can use to collect your data. The methodology is the general research strategy that outlines the way in which research is to be undertaken and, among other things, identifies the methods to be used in it. These methods, described in the methodology, define the means or models of data collection, or sometimes how a specific result is to be calculated. So you could choose either qualitative or quantitative data approach. Quantitative data collection is done using an appropriate instrument for measuring variables in the hypothesis or the research question. The instrument often contains standardized questions as questionnaires and checklists. However, you may wish to use qualitative data approach. Qualitative data is the data collection process which involves you to learn from your participants. People you learn from are not the subject from who you draw your data. However, participants are those who share with you their lived experiences. This means that qualitative research involves extensive interaction between you as the researcher and the research participants. So depending on your research question, you need to choose qualitative or quantitative approach. Both of them have their own advantages and disadvantages. For example, quantitative data, the advantages are larger sample sizes. It is a statistical method that is used to analyze the data. It is appropriate for situations where systematic, standardized comparisons are needed. However, quantitative data has its own limitations as well. It does not always shed light on the full complexity of human experience or perceptions. It can reveal to what extent, but cannot always explore why or how. It may give a false impression of homogeneity in a sample. You may wish to use qualitative data approach. The advantages would be rich, in-depth details which are possible to obtain. Participants can elaborate on their experiences and explain exactly what they mean. Perceptions of participants themselves can be considered, the human factor. They are appropriate for situations in which detailed understanding is essential. Events can be seen in their proper context, more holistically. However, qualitative data has its own limitations as well. It is not always generalizable due to small sample sizes and the subjective nature of the research. Conclusions need to be carefully hedged. Accusations of unreliability are common. Different results may be achieved on a different day with different people. So this is something that you need to take into account and potentially mention in your limitations. Whether you're using qualitative or quantitative approach, you will still need to ask your participants questions. There are closed questions and then there are open questions. What do you think is the difference? Make a note and then compare your notes with the next slide. As mentioned, you may wish to use closed or open questions. Closed questions are the ones which the answers for them are predetermined. The informants are restricted to answering according to the predetermined answers, such as yes or no, day or night, afternoon or noon, etc. They do not need to add anything of their own. These are the characteristics of quantitative data collection questions in the questionnaires. However, you might wish to use qualitative data and you want to ask some open questions. These are the questions that informants are free to write or say whatever they think. Such questions are the characteristics of qualitative questionnaires. If you are using quantitative approach, you may choose to use ranking scales for your closed questions. 5 or 7 points Likert type scales typically involve the respondent being presented with a statement to which he or she is asked to report how he or she feels about the accuracy or otherwise of the statement, ranging between the extremes of strongly agree through neither agree or disagree to strongly disagree. Ranking scales are exceptionally good for measuring attitudes. Here is an example of a Likert scale from a questionnaire which measures perfectionism. As you can see, it consists of different statements, and the answers offer several numbers which participants need to choose. Each number represents a specific statement and answer which is clearly described. So all they need to do is pick a number and choose the correct answer, which helps to measure the participants' attitudes and feelings. The previous slide had a questionnaire that was already made. However, I decided to use my own questions. So for my quantitative questions, an example of my question could be, how often do you wash your hands with soap and water? Please select the most appropriate answer, and then I'm offering 5 different answers to my participants to choose from, which are less than 2 times a day, between 3 and 6 times a day, between 6 and 9 times per day, between 9 and 12 times per day, and more than 12 times per day. My second question could be, how often do you use soap and water to wash your hands? Please select the most appropriate answer. Less than 2 times a day, between 3 and 6 times a day, between 6 and 9 times a day, between 9 and 12 times per day, and more than 12 times per day. When collecting qualitative data, you have a lot of freedom in creating your own questions for your interviews. When you're creating these questions, it's up to you to decide how are you going to collect the data, whether you're going to have a conversation with your participants and make some notes, whether you're allowed to record the answers and then transcribe them, whether you're going to give some questions to your participants to type the answers to or write them out and then give them back to you. So for example, my question could be, please describe and explain the technique you use when washing your hands. I'm not going to read the full answer out, but as you can see, it's quite lengthy. So my participant could have answered that when they wash their hands, they use soap and water and they prefer warm water, and they use the NHS guide, which has 11 steps. And then because it is qualitative data, my participants wanted to add that there is a specific soap that they like to use that does not contain salt as it dries out the skin, and they're usually going for a moisturizing soap, and they prefer to buy a bar of soap which they think is more natural. So qualitative data allows for that freedom, it allows for searching for the meaning. Using a questionnaire is an amazing way of collecting data. However, as any other tool, questionnaires will have their own advantages and disadvantages. I encourage you to stop the video and make a list of advantages and disadvantages of using a questionnaire, and then check your answers with mine. As mentioned before in the video, questionnaire is a great tool to collect quantitative data. But as any other tool, it has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of a questionnaire could be: questionnaires are useful when finding out about people's opinions, perceptions, experiences, or to find out how much knowledge and understanding they have of a topic. It is a good way of collecting a large amount of data. It may be easy to use for the participants. It may be distributed on the internet, allowing people across the world to participate. However, it has its own disadvantages. The drawback of pre-structured response frames answers options may not include the answer a respondent thinks is right for them. Therefore, you could include an option, a space where the participants may provide the answer that is more suitable for them. Partly completed questionnaires reduce the quality of data, limiting the validity of interpretations and the conclusions. One of the best things you can do for your research is use mixed method, of course only if this is appropriate. Mixed method would combine both quantitative and qualitative data. Therefore, you can have a mixture, a combination of questionnaires and interviews. You can use questionnaires to explore the topic in greater depth, and then you can also have some interviews which will help you to search for the meaning. That way, your research will be more accurate. After careful consideration, you must choose the best method for your research. Speak to your tutor or your supervisor, and then when you're completely sure which method is best, get creative and create your own questionnaire. I hope this video was helpful. Thank you so much for watching.